Hello and welcome. I'm Ritika Jhanji-Jagtiani and you're watching this very special show on this very special day, International Day of Women and Girls in Science. Do you know that over the next decade, 80% of jobs will be STEM-based? But do you also know that women are woefully behind, occupying only 14% of these jobs today? Of course, a lot has been done, but still needs to be done ahead. Over the next 2 hours, we'll be celebrating the remarkable journey of IBM India's STEM for Girls India initiative. And we'll have on board all the possible stakeholders who will come forward and discuss about the possible solutions that can make our girls take up and be ready for careers of tomorrow. But let's begin by taking a look at how IBM India's initiative had touched the lives of girls across the country.
मेरा नाम नव्या है। मैं 10वीं क्लास में हूँ। मेरे स्कूल का नाम गवर्नमेंट सीनियर सेकेंडरी स्कूल झारसैतली है।
My name is Muskan Jaiswal. I read in 9th class.
मेरा नाम नवप्रीत कौर है। मैं 9वीं जमात ਦੀ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥਣ ਹਾਂ। ਮੇਰੇ ਸਕੂਲ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਹੈ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਗਰਲਸ ਸੀਨੀਅਰ ਸੈਕੰਡਰੀ ਸਮਾਰਟ ਸਕੂਲ। This is Asra from 10th class. I am studying in MGMGGHS ਨਾਮਪੱਲੀ ਸਕੂਲ। ਮਾਤਾ ਪਿਤਾ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕਰੇਗੀ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਚੰਗੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮੋਬਾਈਲ 'ਤੇ ਚਲਾਉਣਾ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ। ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੋਡਾਥੋਨ ਕੰਪੀਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਰਟੀਸਪੇਟ ਕਰਵਾਇਆ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਇਸਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ।
SFGI के आने से पहले मुझ में थोड़ी कमी थी, जो मतलब जैसे कि मैं किसी के सामने अपने प्रश्न नहीं रख सकती थी, लेकिन अब STEM के आने के बाद मैं अपना प्रश्न सभी से साझा कर सकती हूँ।
I love computers. I really like Scratch. I created deforestation project, which is a major problem of our environment.
Navya, Navpreet, Muskan and Asra are just 4 stories from the lakhs of girls impacted by the STEM for Girls initiative. Over the last 3 years, we have helped many more discover, learn, enjoy and hopefully pursue science. 80% of the jobs of the future are STEM-based. STEM for Girls, IBM's flagship CSR program, was started to give the girls of today an equal chance to become part of the future workforce.
I interact with different people with different creativity. The people were excellent.
STEM से मेरे जीवन में काफ़ी बदलाव आया। मेरा आत्मविश्वास बढ़ा और मुझे बहुत सारी चीज़ें समझ आने लगी। मेरा मैथ के प्रति रुझान और अच्छा हो गया और मुझे मैथ और इंटरेस्टिंग लगने लगा।
STEM प्रोजेक्ट आने के बाद मैंने कई नई चीज़ें सीखी हैं, जैसे कि 21st सेंचुरी स्किल्स, स्क्रैच कोडिंग करना, एल्गोरिथम और डिजिटल टूल्स के बारे में जाना है।
SFGI ਨਾਲ ਮੇਰੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਦੋਂ ਬਦਲਾਵ ਆਇਆ ਸੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕੋਡਾਥੋਨ ਕੰਪੀਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਰਟੀਸਪੇਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੇ ਜਿੱਤ ਹਾਸਿਲ ਕੀਤੀ, ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਜ਼ ਜਿੱਤਿਆ। ਅਤੇ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਮੈਂ ਹੁਣ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਅੱਗੇ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੋਂ ਡਰਨਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਅਤੇ ਮਤਲਬ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹਾਸਿਲ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ।
As we celebrate the journey of IBM India's path-breaking initiative STEM for Girls India, we also put together all the stakeholders to discuss and talk about the further roadmap that will take us towards more and more STEM careers for our girls in the future. Bridging the STEM gender gap, the roadmap to turn 14% to 50% is what our focus is going to be over the course of this panel discussion. And I would quickly like to bring in my very, very esteemed panelists to take this discussion forward, starting with Mr. Manoj Balachandran, Head CSR, IBM India and South Asia, a technocrat with more than 22 years of experience across a variety of areas, an agile leader who's known to lead innovation, automation, spearhead campaigns, and make them hugely successful. And we're going to, of course, understand from him the whole thought process of IBM behind STEM for Girls and the learnings drawn. A very, very warm welcome to you, Mr. Manoj. We also have with us Ms. Rohini Venkateswaran, who's the country manager, East Gulf and Sales Strategy and Planning Gulf, Procter & Gamble, Dubai. She has more than 15 years of experience with PNG, and from her we'll understand that PNG is also doing a lot of work in the field of STEM for girls. And what is the whole vision behind that mission? A very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for giving us time, Ms. Rohini. We have with us Dr. Nisha Mendiratha, Advisor in ScientisG Climate Change Program, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. And very importantly, from her, we'll understand this issue from the perspective of policies and what all needs to be done in terms of policies, in terms of getting more and more girls inclined towards STEM careers, and also how can corporates actually help the government take this forward. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Nisha. We're very glad that we're also being joined by Dr. Indira Vijay Simha, founder, Purna Learning Center, an alternative school which emerged out of her experiences of homeschooling her own children and from her reflections as a teacher and an educator. She's also presently a faculty member of the Azim Premji University. A very warm welcome, Dr. Indira. American India Foundation has been helping IBM in its pursuit of STEM for girls and taking this mission forward in the country. And we have Mr. Matthew Joseph, Country Director, joining us from there. He's someone who has more than 23 years of experience in the development sector. He's worked both with the government and the private sector very, very closely. And he'll help us understand that how he thinks STEM education can actually bridge the digital divide between the youngsters in the country. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Matthew. And you're also being joined by the CEO of Quest Alliance, Mr. Akash Sethi, someone who is empowering the unemployment youth to navigate the future and learning in India by mastering 21st century skills in self-learning. Of course, we're going to talk a lot about innovative learning from him, and also because he works so closely with the youngsters, what do they think about, especially the girls, about careers and what needs to be done in the change that we need to bring about in the generational mindset, which is very, very important. Thank you so much, Mr. Akash, for joining us. So now that I've introduced all my panelists, let me quickly start with Mr. Manoj. Now, Mr. Manoj, first of all, big congratulations going out to you to impact 2 lakh girls, 1 lakh boys in more than 1,600 schools in 12 states of the country is a big achievement. Congratulations to you. First of all, we would like to know that how did IBM decide about focusing its energies on STEM for girls?
So thank you so much, Ritika, for that question. I know that IBM, in its 110 or 111-year-old history, has always been a pathbreaker when it comes to technology and the trends which it has been creating in the industry. As you rightly pointed out, in terms of the percentage of women in STEM, from a 14% of women participation in the tech space, that's a pretty bad number. And our intent is to actually increase that number to a high 30s, reaching out to the 50s, if possible, in the near future. That's the reason why we actually came up with this program called STEM for Girls. Again, as you rightly mentioned, it does not just focus on girls, but we have a focus on boys as well. But the intent is to ensure that the girls of today do not miss out on the job opportunities of tomorrow. Almost 85% of the jobs of the future are going to have an element of STEM involved in it. And especially students and girls of tier 2 and tier 3 cities are kind of missing out on this whole job opportunities.
Thank you so much for your response, Mr. Manoj. Let me just extend a question and go on to Dr. Nisha for an overview of the problem. You mentioned, very rightly mentioned, Mr. Manoj, about the talent pool in the country. Now, Dr. Nisha, India has one of the largest scientific pools in the world. But despite that, what are some of the problems that we face in opening STEM career pathways for women and girls?
I feel, and the statistics says that there are many girls now who want to opt for STEM, but still there are many roadblocks, may it be a social, cultural, or the environment where they are, living. But when we look into the data, there's a sort of gap which states towards the gender parity. It is not so in the education sector that already I feel the women representation is quite convincing when we see in the tertiary education level. At bachelor level, at master level, and even at doctoral level, girls are doing quite well. But when it comes to taking career in science, then there is a real long gap, and we need to bridge that gap. There is a real clear leaky pipeline. As I mentioned, Central Asia, Latin America, Caribbean, Arabian states, there the range is around 41 to 48%. But you will be amazed to see that India is in much lower, ladder. As of now, we are, having around 16%. The UNESCO report says that. So we have to really look into this stream, that how best we can encourage. And there are many programs and initiatives which are being rolled out by Government of India, and also many players who are there into the job. And we want to encourage the importance of the STEM into the career of women, and also within the girl student right from their child.
See, there are social factors which are still play a very important role in our country, and in many ways the gendering of girls happens quite early and across, all social strata, so that girls can see that there are these possibilities, and these should be also part of the ecosystem, which inform parents and girls as they make choice. And finally, when it comes to employers, I heard in an earlier discussion that IBM is one of the friendlier organizations, but not all organizations are equally friendly to women. And I think that's another aspect. If you want seriously that more women should be drawn into careers related to STEM, I think the industry also has to take its role in attracting diverse talents very seriously, very consciously. I think as far as the government goes, DST had commissioned a study on why so many excellent women drop out of science even after doing doctorates and postgraduates. It's a very revealing study. I think it was under one of our very well-known theoretical physicist, Dr. Rohini Godbole, and she has in fact brought out books for younger girls talking about women in science. So these should become, widely translated, widely known, and there are a number of things that can be done. So not one factor, but it needs an ecosystem approach.
Let me take this forward to Mr. Matthew now. Dr. Indra very rightly pointed at the ecosystem, but before Mr. Matthew, I put forward to how do we actually strengthen the ecosystem, I have to ask you about the generational mindset, which is which seems to be at the bottom of this problem. We need to address this mindset, and what kind of intervention is needed to do that? And are you already seeing a shift in that?
We worked on many behavior change models, and there's always a supply side and a demand side. And both needs to be addressed in order to change behavior very consistently and for a long time. So you look at the demand side. It's actually the student herself, her parents, her teachers, who need to be cognizant of the importance of STEM as a viable career choice for the girls. And messages could be that they can stand on their feet, they can take these skills anywhere they move. In India, there is a certain migration that happens at the time of marriage. Parents are concerned about that the investments that they make to the child may not be useful for her later on. These are the mindsets that need to be changed, which create demand. Skills that stay with her is a message that needs to be conveyed to her. And in today's world, you don't need to work from offices. You can even work from home. So many technology companies are today allowing coding to happen from home. Many program activities happening from different places, maybe a city, maybe a town, even villages. So girls are not bound anymore by their geography or their location to access jobs. That will, spike the demand for learning STEM subjects. On the supply side, that's where we work, intensively. That's where the STEM for Girls program comes in, and we convert classrooms into very collaborative environments where children can learn. Teachers are very motivated to, focus not just on girls, the boys too, but then it's the girls who need a lot of handholding and support and motivation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew, for your response. Let me go to Mr. Akash Sethi now. Quest Alliance, Mr. Akash has been doing a lot of work towards bridging the digital divide amongst the youngsters in the country. And one of the moves that you made was the virtual hackathon for girls and boys to actually make both of them into problem solvers. Please share some key learnings that you drew from that experience.
Oftentimes digital learning is consuming curriculum, consuming content, and the assumption is that you're learning because you are consuming content. But I think the shift that is important to make is from being consumers to being creators, which actually gives the confidence that I have learned something, I can express myself in a way that assimilates my learning. So one of the strategies that we used in the lockdown was with respect to, like you said, building this hackathon, which is really based on a 4P model, which is doing projects that you're passionate about, including peers that can help with collaborating around these projects, and bringing in a certain element of playfulness and building in play, because that's what young people really enjoy. If there is play, then you are much more engaged. So through the hackathon process, what we really enabled for young people was to really do a simple process of feel, imagine, do, and share. Feeling for my local environment, my local issues that are that are bothering me, empathizing with that kind of context, imagining solutions, new solutions to answer those problems, and sharing those stories. Change that mindset that young people don't have solutions versus young belief that young people can solve local problems. I think that was the shift we saw that the hackathon process made. People observed that, they were surprised that, especially parents are surprised that children can solve problems that are relevant in the community when they start actually seeing these solutions being demonstrated by children in the local space. It also brings a sort of a shift in the identity that I can be a learner, I can be a creator, I can be an inventor, as opposed to, I am just a consumer of, and I don't have a choice in my own learning.
Thank you so much for outlining that so well for us. And I think to really make this scalable and to address this problem on a wider scale, it really helps if corporates come on board and take this as an agenda. Of course, IBM has done that. And I would like to go across to Ms. Rohini, who's somewhere, who's representing Procter & Gamble. And it's one of the corporates that actually taken up STEM for Girls as one of its important initiatives. If you could just throw a little bit of light on, Ms. Rohini, that what is the whole thought about behind taking up STEM for Girls for Procter & Gamble?
And of course, the ideal vision is to get to 50%, and how we do that. We're doing it in two ways as a company. The first one is itself in creating awareness on what we call unconscious biases. We just launched a campaign just to create awareness in terms of things that we do very, very naturally. I am a mother of two children, an older daughter and a younger boy. And, it's very, very natural for me to say some things which I have to stop myself from doing. So I think the first thing our campaign does is create a little bit of that awareness. And I think that little bit will go a long way in preventing this from happening.
Great. So going forward in this panel discussion, of course, we've taken an overview of the problem and where the gaps lie. Now let's talk about the solutions. And to talk about that, first, I would like to come to you, Mr. Manoj. Of course, we're talking about taking the 14% to 50%. There's some of these groundbreaking inventions and discoveries in science and technology have been made by women. But what, according to you, is a sustainable and a scalable model to bridge the gap?
And a lot of corporates kind of spend a sizable amount of the CSR budget on on education and scaling related stuff. But I think as we move forward, for it to become a movement and to really make an impact, I think it needs to be part of an organization's DNA to actually make an impact. For example, IBM has also, October of last year, 2021, we actually came out and made a commitment to skill 30 million learners by 2030. Now, that's a global commitment that you're making to say, hey, this is a huge gap. This has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed in a holistic manner. STEM for Girls is one of those initiatives, and a partnership with DST, for example, is going into 200 schools this year and promoting the whole idea of STEM and motivating them into the jobs of tomorrow. We are extensively using IBMers as volunteers who can actually come in, stand in front of these students, become their mentors to actually inspire them and coach them to say, hey, if you are at a crossroad and you have to pick and choose, here are some viable options for you, right? And the more they are able to see like-minded people or people who have come in from their kind of a background, who can speak the language to say, hey, here is a role model for you, right? Somebody who's a scientist, who's actually come from this kind of a background, from this kind of a village. If this person can make it, you can make it too. There was a report which came out called Tech Trends and by Texel, and they very clearly stated that in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, the kids are more inclined to learn, especially in tier 2 cities. I think the girls have a 38% more chance of actually completing a course and getting more engaged in these digital content which we're creating, right? So I think a combination of all these different elements, partnerships with people, partnership with like-minded organizations, coming up with digital infrastructure, digital platforms, content, curating content, which is right content in multiple languages, and then the power of partnerships with the right implementing agencies at the right government, and ensuring that it is scalable. I think these are multiple things which we're doing in order to ensure that the programs are sustainable and creating the right impact.
And of course, Mr. Manoj, to take this forward, we really need the government support and policies like that help us do that, right? So,
Absolutely.
Dr. Nisha, of course, my question to you now is that where the government policies stand today, what do you think needs to be improvised? What needs to be changed to take this initiative forward from the government's push point of view?
So I must say that career in STEM is quite competitive nowadays, and it is becoming more and more demanding for a woman. And one thing which was coming to the mind of all government sector and even private players like IBM is doing wonderful work, joining hands with DST. But I will just come to criteria which government thought of earlier. I mean, I will just give a word. There should be 3 S. I'll just put it up like that: self, support, and system for any girl if she's choosing her career. Self means, first of all, she should have confidence in herself that, yeah, she can move ahead in that difficult terrain.
Surely. So we are making steps, though baby steps towards it, but a long way to go for sure. Mr. Matthew, you work so much in the development sector, both with the government and the private sector. So I think you're the perfect person for me to ask that the ecosystem that you understand so well, how do we actually strengthen it? Like Dr. Indra also pointed out, their parents, their schools, their teachers, then the corporates. There are just so many people involved, the society at large with its own biases. How do we strengthen the ecosystem to take this forward?
The good thing is that the government is already convinced. Already there are policies in place. And it's only a matter of implementation that all of us need to get into. If you look at industry, they have a major role to play. IBM is a case in point where they invest their resources in this important direction. And there are many companies, especially tech companies, who are coming together to change this situation in India. Civil society, we are part of that. Our job is to go and connect with people, make sure that we become like a catalyst in the process. You know, schools, their role is very critical here because they are the ones who impart education. The teachers in the schools are highly qualified. In fact, teachers in government schools, the most backward schools, have very highly trained teachers. The only problem here is that, one, they need to be motivated. They need those tools that can actually, support learning, and they need to be guided in the latest that is developed in technology. So that aspect has to be taken care of, and importantly, at the community level. It is usually the gatekeepers, especially the panchayats and the family elders, the religious leaders at the local level. See, once they get a bout of advocacy, that's very important for them to at least start talking of allowing the girls, because the society is in different stages of transition in this vast country, and at some places a lot of influence still continues from those religious elders and community leaders. So we need to advocate to them.
Great. Mr. Akash, I was reading much about your work when you actually put thinking caps on girls. The findings demonstrated that they had a brilliant approach to solve even very gendered problems, which makes us conclude that future requires a more gender-sensitive research. But how do we achieve that, according to you?
Matthew touched upon that how do teachers also start believing more in the potential that girls have, and start creating spaces for girls to express their problem solving skills at a more classroom level. And we've seen that play out. Small things like, is sports only meant for boys? Can the narrative change and girls start participating more actively in sports? Or sometimes it's about overcoming the fear that you have around going up to a stage and talking about your achievements, to nominate yourself as an anchor for new initiatives that are happening in school. It's also about if I have the right to choose my own career versus parents saying this is not possible for you to do, because they have biases and perceptions about what are the kind of careers that are possible. So I think it really has all these different actors who need to kind of change perceptions, but it does start with, I think, the three key actors of the learner, the educator, the parent really need to work closely to make these shifts.
The way forward is definitely scaling, ensuring that we move from, we are right now in 12 states. Our intent is to ensure that we move to more and more states, and that is also possible with the power of partnerships, which I've kind of outlined earlier. The more other like-minded organizations are willing to come and join hands, I think we will be able to scale this in a much better fashion. We are already having talks with another MNC to introduce STEM for girls in Jharkhand, for example. And teachers' capacity building is another route.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manoj. So it's time I actually request all my guests on the panel to give me one parting line from this discussion, which is, of course, full of hope and full of promise, that we actually take STEM for girls in the direction it deserves. So let me start with you, Mr. Akash, on this. What would your one parting line would be for this?
I think for me, it's just like a plant that really needs to thrive. They need nurturing conditions, and therefore one has to check for soil, we have to check for sunlight, we have to check for water, and only then, flourishing can happen for that plant. So I think similarly, we need to really work with multiple stakeholders, the government, teachers, parents, adolescents, and communities, so that the whole ecosystem actually can drive a sustainable and transformative change.
Great, very, very well put. Thank you so much, Mr. Akash. Mr. Matthew.
I think the most important thing here is providing the girls an experiential learning. The girl should know that she can actually do it. She's provided the tools for doing it. She's provided the capabilities to do it, and the motivation to pursue a career. I think that's very important.
So the whole idea is to ensure that we partner with more and more organizations, bring the concept of emerging tech, bring the whole idea about STEM education, 21st century skills, all these about inspiring people to learn how to learn. I think that's the most important factor, because I think as long as you are able to give them that aspect of learning, then whether it is AI today or blockchain tomorrow, cybersecurity, we are talking about all these tech. In 5 years from now, we don't know what the new tech and the catchword is. As long as we are enabling the kids to learn, I think we would have done our jobs well. And I think that happens through the power of partnership.
For me, it's and. I mean, the gap is so big and so large. It's and. Do everything, do more, do all the time, do every time, right? So it's about working with society, working on unconscious biases, getting more of that, giving girls access to education and technology, educating families and spouses on the benefit of it, creating role models and inspiration on being able to do it. So I think every idea is a good idea, and every idea can become a force of nature, right? So do more, do lots, do as much as you can, because the gap we have to stem is a lot and a large amount.
Thank you, Ms. Rohini. Moving on to Dr. Indira.
I feel one thing that I would like to say is that if we can enable teachers to experience the joy of teaching science in a way that allows all children, boys, girls, transgenders, if you like, neuroatypical or not, to enjoy exploring, creating, and problem solving. I think teachers can experience the joy of science with the children themselves. I think that is something that I look forward to seeing, if you're talking of scale, in every classroom.
And Dr. Nisha, what about your parting line? Your takeaway from this discussion?
I would like to say one thing, that all of us are working together to retain more and more women into science in STEM. And we are trying to look into various initiatives to try to give not only them a provision to take STEM as a career, but also in re-entrance through various provisions. We are trying to just create a career path for them so that without any break, they can move forward. So we are really working towards enhancing the representation of women in STEM. And there are various programs which are being implemented under different categories, keeping in view the individual capability of women, their competency level and aptitude in terms of basic research. So it is our responsibility that how to enhance their capability, how to bring them more competent environment, kind of an ecosystem, and generate curiosity and aptitude in themselves to understand STEM. So I would like to put a 4 R's here. Those R's are realize, retain, recognize, and reward. We need to realize the potential of girl. We should make them feel that they are worth taking STEM. So the real self-realization should become within them. Then we must have the kind of avenue to retain them into science through our various perspective. That is our role. Third is recognition, that they are no way less than men and they have to show their potential, and there should be proper reward system given to the girls and women. If they are doing good work, they should be rewarded properly. So Gati program DST has initiated. There is a Curie program. Many more things are there from Government of India Department of Science and Technology, which I would be happy to share with you. But I would like to end by saying these 4 R's: realize, retain, recognize, and reward girls and women. Thank you.
So as it's been rightly pointed out, that science and technology are critical for advancement of a nation, and no nation can really move forward without the participation of its women and girls. So let us all, the government, the corporates, and the society at large, let us all collaborate to support the next generation of women in STEM so that they work and they go on to make history and also become role models for our young girls in future. A big thank you to all my panelists for joining us on this very, very special panel discussion today. Thank you all. You know what's really heartening for a corporate that's trying to create an impact? It is to create real change on ground. IBM India proudly presents the stories of its STEM champions.
इसमें हमने ड्रोन के बारे में सीखा, सैटेलाइट्स के बारे में सीखा, ड्रोन कितने प्रकार के होते हैं उसके बारे में सीखा, सैटेलाइट्स कितने प्रकार के होते हैं उसके बारे में सीखा, हमने पिको सैटेलाइट के बारे में सीखा, शोल्डरिंग करना सीखा और ड्रोन को कैसे उड़ाते हैं वो सीखा और हमने ड्रोन को अपने हाथों से उड़ाया।
तो कक्षा 8 से लेकर 12 तक के बच्चे, क्योंकि जब वो 11-12 के बच्चों को प्रोजेक्ट में काम करते देखते थे, तो छोटी क्लास के बच्चे जो कि जैसे कि क्यूरियोसिटी होती है वो ज़्यादा आकर्षित होते हैं। 8th और 9th 10th जितने भी छोटी क्लास के बच्चे हैं, इवन 6th वाले तक छोटे छोटे प्रोजेक्ट बनाने सीख गए थे।
मैं बड़े होकर साइंटिस्ट बनना चाहती हूँ, जिसके लिए मैंने हु एम आई मतलब मैं कौन हूँ, मेरी रुचियाँ क्या, ये चैप्टर्स पढ़े थे मैंने और लास्ट में मैंने साइकोमेट्रिक टेस्ट दिया, जिसमें मैंने अपना रास्ता देखा कि मैं आगे जाके वैज्ञानिक बन सकती हूँ।
स्टेम फॉर गर्ल्स लड़कियों के लिए एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म है जिसके द्वारा टेक्नोलॉजी को यूज करके लड़कियां कुछ ऐसा कर सके जिससे उनकी स्वयं की पहचान बन सके।
मैं साइंस में पढ़ना चाहती हूँ क्योंकि मैं फ्यूचर में डॉक्टर बनना चाहती हूँ। मेरी रोल मॉडल है हिमा दास, जो कि एक छोटे से गांव से निकलकर अपनी पहचान बना लिया है।
मेरे एक स्टूडेंट है पॉलिटी हाई स्कूल से, जिसके घर में लड़कियों की शादी बहुत जल्दी किया जाता था, पर अब वो भी अच्छे से पढ़ाई करना चाहते हैं और उसके माता पिता भी चाहते हैं कि उनकी लड़की अच्छे से पढ़ाई करे और आगे चल के कोई नौकरी करे।
ఆడపిల్ల దేన్నైతే చూస్ చేసుకుందో, ఒక జాబ్ చేయాలని కోరుకుంటుందో దానికి వాల్యూ ఇచ్చి దాన్ని నమ్మి బాగా సక్సెస్ అవుతుంది అని నాకు ఈ సెషన్ ప్రూవ్ చేసింది.
అంటే ఏ ఫిజిక్స్ సంబంధించిన ఏ విషయాన్ని సరే వాళ్ళ గ్రూప్లో పెట్టడానికి అని అనుకుంటున్నాను. నేను ఈరోజు మార్నింగే నేను చూశాను, దానికి కూడా నేను డీపీ ఫోటో కూడా పెట్టడం జరిగింది. అలాగే ఆ అబ్బాయిలతో కంపేర్ చేసేటప్పుడు అమ్మాయిలు బాగా చదవడం అనేది, అంటే నేను వచ్చిన ఈ 4 ఏళ్ళు నా జర్నీలో చూస్తే అమ్మాయిల ఎడ్యుకేషన్ బాగుంది. లాస్ట్ 2 ఇయర్స్లో కూడాను IIITకి అమ్మాయిలు అనేది ఒక అమ్మాయి వెళ్ళడం జరిగింది. అలాగే అమ్మాయిలు లాస్ట్ ఇంకొక అమ్మాయి అయితే ఇంటర్మీడియట్లో కాలేజ్ ఫస్ట్ రావడం అనేది కూడా జరిగింది. అంటే ఎడ్యుకేషన్ యొక్క ఇంపార్టెన్స్ అనేది అమ్మాయిల ఆ ఏరియాలో అంటే ఈ స్టెమ్ ఫర్ గర్ల్స్ ఉండేటువంటి ఏవైతే మనం నేర్చుకున్న అంశాలను వాళ్ళ మీద అప్లై చేసామో అది ఉపయోగపడిందని నేను అనుకుంటున్నాను.
मेरा पसंदीदा इवेंट शेयर इवेंट था, जिसमें हमने अपने सेल्फ और जेंडर के विषय में फीलिंग और लर्निंग शेयर की थी।
हाफ ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन जो है वो कहीं ना कहीं पीछे रह गए हैं। उनको साइंस और टेक्नोलॉजी में इसलिए आगे आना चाहिए कि उनकी क्या सोच है, उनकी क्या ज़रूरतें हैं, उसको वो बेटर समझ सकेंगी और उसके साथ वो नए आइडियाज़ को आगे बढ़ावा दे सकेंगी।
IBM STEM ફોર ગર્લ્સ પ્રોગ્રામ મને લિંગ તફાવતો અને મારા જીવન પર પડે તે પ્રભાવોને સમજાવવામાં ઘણી મદદ કરે છે અને મેં ક્રેચ પરના મૂળભૂત કોડિંગ પણ શીખ્યા છે, જેની અંદર કમ્પ્યુટરની ઘણી બધી લેંગ્વેજો અને કમ્પ્યુટર વિશેની માહિતી આવે છે.
પહેલાંની જો વાત કરું તો આ પ્રોજેક્ટ પહેલાં દીકરીઓની સંખ્યા ખૂબ જ અનિયમિત રહેતી, અત્યારે સારી એવી નિયમિત સંખ્યામાં આવે છે. પહેલાં દીકરીઓ કોઈ પૂછતી નહીં, અત્યારે મને દીકરીઓ વારંવાર પૂછે છે. સ્ટેમ પ્રોજેક્ટ દ્વારા જે ટોલ ફ્રી નંબર આપવામાં આવે છે એમાં પણ કોલ કરે છે કે મારે આ બનવું હોય તો શું કરવું, આ બનવું હોય તો શું ભણવું.
कई पेरेंट्स बोलते भाई लड़कियों को ज़्यादा नहीं पढ़ाना चाहिए, बस 8th 10th तक पढ़ाते बच्चों लड़कियों को और आगे क्लासेस नहीं करवाते। उनकी पढ़ाई कंप्लीट नहीं करवाते। तो इससे ये होता है भाई लड़कियां भी कुछ कर सकती है, तो लड़कियों को ये सिखाते हैं।
सभी को 21वीं शताब्दी के अंदर सशक्त बनाने में ये मदद करेगा। तो खास करके लड़कियों के लिए प्रोग्राम अच्छा है। तो मैं चाहूँगी कि इसको और बड़े स्तर पर चालू रखा जाए।
ਮਾਤਾ ਪਿਤਾ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕਰੇਗੀ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਚੰਗੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮੋਬਾਈਲ 'ਤੇ ਚਲਾਉਣਾ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ। ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੋਡਾਥੋਨ ਕੰਪੀਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਰਟੀਸਪੇਟ ਕਰਵਾਇਆ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ। ਅਤੇ ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਮਨ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਕੋਡਿੰਗ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਇੰਟਰਸਟ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਗਿਆ, ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੇਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੀ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਡਿਸੀਜ਼ਨ ਆ ਉਹ ਚੇਂਜ ਕੀਤਾ।
Yes, I have been seen a lot of changes in my. I knew about myself and my ability, interests, and my rights. Also, a lot of changes occurs me. It is good for me. My favorite concept is my rights and changing body and mind.
గర్ల్స్ కూడా చాలా మంచి యాక్టివ్గా ఉండి చదువులో వెనుకబడినప్పటికీ కూడా వీడియోస్ తయారు చేయడంలో, ఇంకా సాంగ్స్ స్క్రిప్ట్ రాయడం ఇలాంటి విషయంలో చాలా చురుకుగా పాల్గొంటున్నారు. దానివల్ల ఏమవుతుందంటే పిల్లల్లో మంచి టాలెంట్ ఉన్నవి అన్నీ కూడా బయటకు వస్తున్నాయి.
स्टेम और गर्ल्स प्रोग्राम क्लास करने के बाद मेरे एक लीडरशिप का जो गुण था वो बहुत ही वृद्धि हुआ। जैसे कि मेरी एक स्कूल में एक शेयर इवेंट था स्टेम का, सो मैं उसका लीडरशिप थी और मैं मेरे दोस्तों को इकट्ठे करके उस मिशन को भी उस प्रोग्राम को भी सक्सेसफुल बनाई थी।
It was really like an eye opener for teachers like me. It let me realize that everything that comes to my mind to bring a change in the society through my students can be implemented in my classroom.
ಸೊ ಆವಾಗ ನಾನು ಗೊತ್ತಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ ನಾನು ಈ ಕೋಡಿಂಗ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಜಾಯಿನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನಾನು ಇದು ಕಲ್ತ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಯೂಸ್ ಆಯಿತು. ಮುಂದೆ ನಾನು ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟಿವಿಟಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಮತ್ತು
As IBM India prepares to enter the next phase of this big initiative, STEM for Girls India, we would like to extend our sincere thanks to the Rajasthan government for its unrelenting support towards making this initiative a huge success.
आज विज्ञान के क्षेत्र में महिलाओं और हमारी लड़कियों के अंतर्राष्ट्रीय दिवस के अवसर पर मैं सभी माता पिता से, अभिभावकों से यही अपील करूंगा कि अपनी बेटियों को खूब पढ़ाएं, अच्छे साइंटिस्ट, अच्छी टेक्नोलॉजिस्ट, अच्छी इंजीनियर बनाएं और स्टेम के क्षेत्र में शिक्षा लेने के लिए खूब प्रोत्साहित करें। राजस्थान के कोने कोने में पढ़ रही बालिकाओं तक स्टेम की पहुंच बनाने के लिए IBM, माईटेक, अमेरिका इंडिया फाउंडेशन और कैस्ट अलायंस राजस्थान सरकार और प्रशासन के साथ मिलकर दिन रात काम कर रहे हैं। मुझे गर्व है कि इस पहल से सरकारी स्कूलों की बुनियाद और भी मजबूत हो रही है और हमारी लड़कियों में विश्वास पैदा हो रहा है। मैं राज्य की ओर से अन्य कंपनियों से भी अपील करूंगा कि इस मुहिम से जुड़ें।
While IBM India celebrates the remarkable journey of its STEM for Girls India initiative, we are also very excited to see how STEM has actually trickled down onto the agendas of other corporates' boardrooms as well.
We are working in the 4 states with the engineering colleges, and the number of the participation of the girls are enhanced. So it shows that the backward-forward linkages of pursuing scientific and more science-based learnings in the school level help in terms of girls to pursue more career in these areas. We at the Vodafone Foundations will you be committed doing more such initiatives empowering women and build culture of science-based learning in this way? Thank you.
And in the case of the private sector, and I think in the case of MasterCard specifically, we believe that our role is not only to provide financial support to achieve this vision, but also critical technical assistance, and I think most importantly, examples of our employees, and what studying STEM can really unlock for the girl child. And so we're excited that with our partnership with American India Foundation, we have reached over 110,000 girls across urban and rural geographies in India.
We become, or these students become, I'll say, creator or innovators of solutions, rather than just consumers of solutions that other people are creating there. And in this particular context, what we are trying to do, and we have started our work since last 5 years or so, focusing on 150 plus schools, working with more than 100,000 students, where the aim and intent is that bring in the whole creativity, bring in the whole curiosity, bring the whole collaboration and communication there, bring the whole element of demystifying science and maths in a way that students start using the principles of these subjects to create solutions which can not just benefit them as an individual, but also benefit the larger community in which they all are located at.
Do you know that women have actually been behind many groundbreaking inventions and discoveries in science and technology? But of course, their journey has not been without challenges. What were these challenges, and what do these women think can be done to have more and more role models like them to inspire our girls for careers of future? Let's deep dive into this with none other than the women in science. Hello and welcome. This is Ritika Jhanji-Jagtiani here to moderate a very, very important panel discussion with my very esteemed panelists for the day. And without further ado, I would like to quickly introduce you to Ms. Gayatri Parthasarthi, who's VP and Senior Partner Asia Pacific Banking Leader, IBM Services. She'll be, of course, giving us the perspective of being in the tech space for such a long time, and also talk a little about how IBM has been spearheading STEM for Girls initiative in India. We're also being joined by Ms. Nandita Jairaj, who's the co-founder of thelifeofscience.com, and she's been gathering voices of women in science for the past 6 years now. We'll hear from her all her learnings and all the things that have surprised and shocked her in her journey of these years. Also being joined by Dr. Divya Karnad, who's a marine conservationist, scientist, and professor, co-founder of In Season Fish, and also the first Indian woman to receive the Netherlands-based Future for Nature 2019 award. A very, very warm welcome to you, Dr. Divya. And we are very, very honored to have with us Professor Rohini Godbole, who's a physicist and a professor at the Center for High Energy Physics in the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. Someone who's not just been teaching kids for the many decades, but is involved in extensive research work. And her contribution to science and technology has also been recognized by the Government of India, and she was bestowed the Padma Shri for that. And we also have with us Ms. Purnima Sitharaman, who's the director of Zynga, India's first video game designer to join the Global Gaming Hall of Fame. She's someone who really believes that women getting into gaming can actually change the game of gaming. Now, how is that to be done? We'll understand from her very well. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning, despite your busy schedule. Let's get it started. I would like to put my first question forward to Ms. Gayatri. Ms. Gayatri, you've had a great career. You've occupied some great leadership positions across various organizations. Let's just start about understanding how your tech journey has been and how you see the evolution of the space over the past few years.
Hey, very good morning. And it's indeed my pleasure and privilege to be in this forum, talking about STEM for women and women in science, technology, whether it is mathematics, engineering, on STEM overall, right? It's a beautiful place to first and foremost to be talking about and to be associated with, and as a proud IBMer as well, given the fact that what IBM does in this area as to the children in the country and what we can do beyond. So from my perspective, actually, right, in terms of, I I studied science, right? It was not a coincidence, it was a choice. And I wanted to be studying engineering, but I studied science. I studied my Master of Science in Mathematics and Statistics and Physics. That's what I did. And then I also did my statistics independently, right, in terms of from my operations research perspective. And I started working in technology for many years now. I think moon years ago, I think many moon years ago that I have been in the industry. And one thing I notice is that the aspiration of the children, aspiration of women to be in technology and to be in science and to learn and to contribute is definitely increasing by the day, by the awareness, by the kind of opportunities that are placed in front of them, and also how they could be able to take that up as their passion plus their career choice or passion independently as well, right? So there are multiple opportunities, I would say, that are coming up for in today's world. Personally, what I have faced is that being a science student myself, I love to do mathematics and I love to be in my physics lab, kind of an approach. I studied and I joined in an IT industry, right, with Digital Equipment Corporation and moved on to many places. And I am with IBM for many years and leading the Asia Pacific banking industry. But banking as well for me is it's more technology than truly in terms of how we work. Some of the banks have also told themselves as an objective that they want to be a technology organization rather than be just a bank, right? Because technology enables them to be much more sharper than competition. For example, one of our clients' actual goal and objective is to call themselves as a technology organization, and they're a bank. They're a bank, and they're a global bank, right? So that is the way things are moving in my world. The disruption is absolutely right. I would say sky is the limit. We can talk for many hours on that, and I would love to obviously hand it back to Ritika now, right, in terms of saying that sky is truly the limit. And my association with IBM STEM is this is the first time, and I'm actually really looking forward to, in terms of me associating with myself with STEM IBM initiative for a long time to come, and long, in terms of association in contributing and also enjoying, right? It's always both when you really start working with it. That's what I am really looking for. And I hand it back to Ritika because I am sure that there are going to be many questions and we will be answering them in this forum here.
Moving ahead, I would like to go across to you, Rukmini. Having spent decades in teaching, I'm sure you started your career in science and technology when there were even lesser number of girls who were doing this. So what was your motivation and how's your journey been like?
Thank you very much, Ritika, for asking this question. First, I would like to sort of correct a little bit that it's not just teaching science and technology that I do, but for the past 5 decades almost, I have been doing research in science and technology. And I think there is an important discrimination here, difference here. That's why I'm emphasizing on it. Now, I would say that in my opinion, girls studying STEM subjects has never been a problem in India, even 50 years ago, even when, I was young. Sure, we were maybe, for example, 15 in a class of 50. So we were 1/3, and that has been actually the number among students in STEM, I think, for the last 3 or 4 decades. So to begin with, that's the first observation I would like to make, that girls' education, participation in education in India in STEM subjects actually has been healthy since after the independence. I'm not going before that. And particularly in the last few decades, or maybe at least 1 decade, there are reports from the government which actually show that it's across the class, all classes of society, across all states, that about 30 to 40% students take STEM education. This is the first statement I would like to make. Now, particularly in my case, I went to an all-girls school in a Marathi medium, that is the vernacular school. And because it was a girls' school, and it was actually a very famous girls' school, it was the first girls' high school in almost whole of South India. So it's today 135 years old. But they did not teach us science till I was in the 7th grade. They taught us home science. But luckily for me, I was insistent that I wanted to participate in an examination, state scholarship examination, which required science as a paper. And my all-girls school never used to have students getting that scholarship. It was a minor, small scholarship, but it's a old India, it's a developing India, where every scholarship to a middle-class family mattered. And I wanted to take part in this, and my teachers sort of looked at me and said, "We will help you." And that became, they took extra time, and that was my introduction to world of science. So that's where I started studying science. Now here comes to the last part of your question about career in science. See, these according to me are two separate things, and that's why I separated them earlier also. That I can do science, that I can do research, that I can make, and participate in processes which look at the discoveries, which look at the secrets of nature. This actually I think I got in my education in Indian Institute of Technology, where I did my master's. And I got to get to do the master's because I was a recipient of a prestigious scholarship called National Science Talent Scholarship, which was like our KVPY of today. Only because of that, my middle class parents could send me to IIT. So I would say that I am a beneficiary of efforts that the government actually put out, that young people should do pure science, not particularly young girls should be doing pure science. And that is the way I would love it to be, that a general effort that you do for increasing participation of science automatically includes girls. That's the future I would love to have.
Let me go across to Dr. Divya here. Dr. Divya, you're someone who's not only chosen science as a career, but you also chose a stream that required you to do extensive field work. And I'm sure that must have come with its own challenges. How did you overcome them? And also, you're a recipient of a very, very prestigious The Future for Nature 2019 award. After all the challenges, the people who doubted you, do you think something's changed for you now after you've received this recognition?
So with respect to field work, I think one really needs to be very passionate and motivated. Otherwise, I don't think you can continue to do this for a very long time, given all the kinds of obstacles that are put in our path, especially as women. And also the second point that Dr. Rohini made about family becomes especially important in a field-driven career, because it involves you taking your family to those locations, which I think is sort of a reverse migration. While everyone is coming to the city to educate children, you are going in the opposite direction. So it's a bit, it really, as I said, really requires family support for you to be able to do this.
Absolutely. And Dr. Divya, the second part of my question, just very briefly, wanted to touch upon that. But when you receive a recognition, when you receive a reward, like in your case, you received this award, have the doubters got converted into believers now?
I think one of the main things that has happened is that, a part of my work involves not just the research itself, but actually outreach to other people, going beyond one's discipline and one's field and so on. And that has really improved after receiving an award, because I don't think when one is doing science and one sort of has their head down, doing your own work, it's very difficult to spend the time or the effort to, really reach out to other people who might benefit from the kind of science that you're doing.
Right.
And that I think has really, the visibility of my work has really increased, and that's been a really great thing, because it's brought a lot of other new opportunities and so on.
You know, I was reading about you, and it's so inspiring, Purnima, that you actually are a part of the Global Gaming Hall of Fame. I'm sure when girls look up to someone like this, they find a role model in what they want to pursue, they really get encouraged. So, how do you think we get more and more women to become game developers in India? What is it that needs to be done in that direction?
I think one, that we need to break this kind of, the elitism of gaming, I would say, where we see that only a certain spectrum of people are considered to be this gamer, someone who knows the industry and all of that. That's not true. You can learn, right? It's just about just give it a shot. Now, unless we are exposed to something new, how would we know whether we like it or not? And as women, generally, we should be a little okay to take risks and come into an industry that we may be a little unfamiliar with. This was also similar to what the IT industry was before, right? Which was again largely male dominated, and then more and more women started to get in there, right? So this is just following the same set of history over and over. And now we are just another industry. And trust me, we need that kind of diversity, and not just in terms of gender, right? We need all kind of people, because we are catering to them. Who is the one who's playing our game, our target audience? We need to cater to them, and who best to know that than the people who are consuming this, and
Right.
someone who is in the same user persona of the players who are consuming this, right? So we need these people to actually make better content. So in fact, it's the other way around. We desperately need them, and we are just waiting for them to come in.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. Moving on to Ms. Nandita here. Ms. Nandita, you've been interacting with women across the STEM spectrum for years now. I'm sure you've come across many women role models in this. Could you please share us some of the key learnings that you've drawn in this journey of yours through the interaction you've had?
Thanks, first of all, to your whole team for organizing this. And I'm really happy to listen, actually, more than I am to talk. But regarding your question about what I've seen, so just to very quickly brief everybody who might be listening, my job is a science journalist. I see myself as part of STEM also, because any type of communication is really crucial for STEM to progress, and for us to make sure that there is equity and that there is diversity in STEM in our country. So something I've been doing, like you said, for the past 6 years has been talking to initially women in STEM, but now also other underrepresented people in STEM, and just trying to find out what they do, number one, and what it's like for them to be doing science in whatever capacity that they are.
You know, from the time you started covering the journeys and started interacting with women in science and technology to now, especially in the last 3 to 4 years, we're seeing a shift, at least in the intention. A lot of work is happening from corporates like IBM, who are spearheading STEM initiatives in India, and other corporates are also trying to collaborate with them and push it forward. Are there any surprising changes? Are there any good positives that you think we have moved towards in the last decade in this field?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in the past 5 years, there's been this explosion of conversations about women in science, especially. That these conversations did exist, especially within the scientific ecosystem. If you actually track the kind of measures that the government has been taking to improve women in science, the history of it is quite, it started in the early 2000s or even late 90s. However, that was sort of that was within the scientific atmosphere, and it never was heard out in the public. But now you hear of I think every February, especially because of the International Day for Women and Girls in Science, there are so many conferences, and there are a lot of workshops where people are asked to speak about gender, the gender gap especially. So I think conversations are a lot more. Not all of, I mean, I would hesitate from treating that as a, complete sort of revolution, because I think, in this day of social media, there's a lot that is being done for the optics. People know that they need to speak about this, or or they need to celebrate Women's Day or International Day, and then they look good. So I mean, so I think that we need to really scratch the surface and make sure these attempts are sincere. So that's where I think, you know, it's at least begun. So it's a good thing, but we need to extend ourselves to make sure that people are following it up with action. And also we start looking at this problem intersectionally, which is still quite lacking, though now we have some conversations on the intersections of caste and disabilities. You know, even if women are increasing in number in science, we need to ask, but what kind of women are they? Is the progress happening in all groups uniformly? So these conversations are only now starting and need to be encouraged more and not be seen as, you know, so provocative, really, because it's just what we're seeing. So I think we are opening up to that, and I hope that things will keep improving.
Sorry, may I just interject, because now I remember, and it sort of connects very much with what Nandita was saying. I personally have been involved in 2 efforts in which I think are very useful. So first, I want to echo the statement that Nandita made, that we should not be having discussions about women in STEM only on 11th February and 9th or 8th of March or 9th of March. This has to be a dialogue, continuous dialogue. This has to be in the forefront, not the women or just women scientists celebrating, but the issues. So I want to echo that. And secondly, I want to say that I personally think that there has been a very welcome move that India's science and technology policy in 2020 has an entire chapter on equity and inclusion. So and that is the additional intersectionality that Nandita is talking about. So the need for science to be more inclusive, not for the benefit of the excluded class, not as charity, but for science. So my slogan really is that right now, the way I feel, it's not just science for women, which is one thing that we are discussing and celebrating today, but also women for science. They are essential for increasing the multidimensionality of the scientific processes. And I'm happy that both on the occasion of 75th anniversary of our freedom, actually Vigyan Prasar is bringing out stories of women of the past, and that would be adding to the role model stories that some of us have already brought about. And I would just plan to bring that to the notice of the listeners. And goodbye.
Thank you so much, Professor Rohini, for bringing that up. So let me just take this inclusiveness forward to Ms. Gayatri now, and that's my last question on the panel. Ms. Gayatri, you spoke about, like, for example, a bank wanting to be seen more as a technology company now. How about, what do you think needs to be done as far as the corporate culture goes in the country so that we can get more employability of women in STEM careers?
The corporate career has to do few things, right, in my mind, and some of them are in place and some of them have to be done. Number one, from an educational aspect, we need to obviously see the thought of being associated with science to young girls right from early stage, right, very early stage, which is definitely taking a step. When you look at the same lens in terms of the corporate career, the kind of predictions that are there, right, the number of jobs in the next decade that are going to be, right, in terms of STEM related is going to be multifold. And how do you enable that the right kind of percentage of women will be in that position to take those jobs and sustain it and do it, right? So the corporate's initiative are multifold. First and foremost, choosing and giving absolutely equal, opportunity and the responsibility for the women to get those jobs, which is very, very important. Build an ecosystem, right, which is going to really, really help them in terms of achieve those jobs, right, and do that rightly. And third is provide to take care of to the points that have been made in terms of the social and, even from a self perspective, the kind of impact that the women have to go through, right? In terms of the kind of flexibility that the women might need, especially the young women who might need and who might also drop off, right, at some point in cliff level, saying that, oh, I can't do this or I can't go above this because I can only manage everything at this level, right? That is where it gets stagnated, and that stagnation shall not be allowed and permitted. And you provide that support and the flexibility for the women to make sure that you are that providing that extra hand, right? It's an extended family approach for me, right? It's an extended family approach for me, so that women do continue and take barriers and go up in terms of the right positions as well, right? And definitely keep an eye on in terms of the percentage or the diversity of the people who are in the STEM jobs that are coming up in the corporate world, and making sure that there is an effort, and it's not a lip service, it's a real genuine effort that's made to make sure that the corporate world also really gives it the significance of having the right people at the right positions, right? That's what I would say. It's multifold, but very interesting, and steps are being taken, not that it's not being taken, but take it more to make sure that we are achieving what we need to achieve, right? To have more women in taking this as a career.
I'm so glad, Ms. Gayatri, we've actually been able to take a deep dive into so many important aspects through this discussion. But before I let my panelists go, I would like to come to each one of you to just get a one-line parting comment from you, your message for a 10th standard girl who wants to pursue a career in STEM and is watching this. What would that be? Let me start with you, Nandita.
Sure. So my message to a 10th standard girl studying science would be, remember that science is just a subject and there's so many things you can do with it. You can teach science, you can do science, you can draw science, you can write science. And just because you're good at arts does not mean that you should brush off science. You can love multiple things at a time and do so many beautiful things with it. So I would just encourage them to stay open and see science as something that is full of possibilities and not limiting at all.
I think my message would be to not give up, to keep persevering, because even if there are people who doubt your abilities or who feel that you cannot do something, I think by proving yourself repeatedly, and unfortunately we have to do this repeatedly, people eventually, give in and realize that you are really passionate about what it is that you want to do. So never give up and keep persevering.
That's a wonderful question, actually. My answer to a 10th class girl who's interested to pursue science, and if she asks me, my advice to her would be to go for it. Really go for it, because there are so many opportunities and so many perspectives that one can take into science, and she can excel. She should not think about any barriers, because barriers will always curtail her thinking and the opportunities that she'll be looking at it. So without any barriers, sky's the limit, go for it and be successful. That would be my message. Thank you.
The message I would like to give, whether it is girl or a boy, but more so for girls because there are not that many in the world who are scientists, I would like to kind of, make the following statement. I would like to tell them that, one should be true to oneself and choose one's path in life because one's heart desires it. But mind you, before that, we need to critically evaluate one's abilities, because we are the base judge to decide what we can or we cannot do. And once one decides what one wants to do and one trots on the path that we have chosen with full thought, no obstacle can be too difficult and no mountain is too high. Just like Gayatri said, reach for the sky, the world is yours. Nothing can stop you if you decide what you want to do after evaluating what you can do. Don't let others decide for you. Decide for yourself. May it be staying at home and be a homemaker, or may it be climbing the Everest.
Thank you to all my panelists. What an inspiring discussion this has been this morning. And thank you to each one of you for making time out for this panel discussion and share your experiences and your insights with us. So the crux of it is that we all need to cultivate and nurture a STEM mindset in our girls and prepare them for careers of future, because we all know that when she STEMs, we all win. Thank you so much. With the achievements of past 3 years of STEM for Girls India under its belt, now IBM India's eyes are all set looking at the journey ahead. So let's hear it from IBM India itself on what are its goals for the next 3 years to come.
Hi everyone, it's a pleasure and a privilege to join you here today. I wish that we could talk in person, but at least for now, we're going to have to rely on the next best thing. As we all know, it's the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. What better time to celebrate how far we've come? Today, from where I sit, the future looks bright. I am inspired to see us grow together as lifelong students, and we are inspiring others to become lifelong students, especially women. I use the term lifelong students deliberately because I think it's one of the most important jobs we'll ever perform. It doesn't matter how many degrees we might have, or how many years we spent in school, or how fancy our professional title is. And it doesn't matter whether we're busy raising a family, or busy at work, or doing both at the same time. We are lifelong students because we're curious. We want to improve ourselves and our communities. But there's another reason we are lifelong students, because we have to be. Technology is moving so fast and so far that it's almost impossible to succeed in life if we don't keep current. We want to create first-rate education and job opportunities for students, particularly for those of us who happen to be women. Being a student means understanding the past, but also preparing for the future. There are challenges that we need to address to ensure that we keep making progress. Let's start with the skills shortage. As a society, we've traditionally been concerned that there are not enough jobs to go around. But in today's market, that's just not true. In India, the demand for tech talent is 8 times larger than the pool of available fresh talent. That was in 2020. By 2024, the demand for skilled workers will be 20 times greater than supply. Quite simply, technology is changing the nature of work. Yes, artificial intelligence is expected to replace 85 million jobs worldwide by 2025, but it will also create 97 million new jobs in that same time frame. And unless you think that the talent shortage just affects jobs in the tech sector, think again. We are all tech workers now. I cannot think of a single industry or job role that doesn't touch tech in some way. Employers know what they have to do now: expand the talent pool. But how? By working with other companies and with educators to foster diversity. A diverse and inclusive workforce with ample representation by women will not only address the skills shortage, but also inspire more innovation. Diversity of gender and culture produces diversity of thought, which will lead to new ideas. And those new ideas, in my opinion, are likely to be more inclusive and less biased. We need that approach for important technologies like AI. One way to improve diversity is increasing the presence of women in STEM careers, which unfortunately is still low. In India, women comprise only 34% of the tech workforce. The good news is that in India, the number of women who have opted for STEM studies continues to grow. But there's still a lot of opportunity for more progress in India, and globally too. Expanding opportunities for women is not only the right thing to do, but it's an urgent thing to do. And it's also the most profitable thing to do. Harvard University has shown that workplace teams that have comparable numbers of women and men outperform male-majority teams by a noticeable margin. The Wall Street Journal has also found that diverse companies do better financially. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. The United Nations finds that women comprise just 3% of students worldwide who take information and communication technology classes, 5% for mathematics and statistics courses, and 8% for engineering, manufacturing, and construction courses. So how do we create opportunity for girls and women? One answer is public-private partnerships like IBM's STEM for Girls program. We're so proud of what we're accomplishing. Together, we've reached 300,000 young adults across 12 Indian states, and we are just getting started. With this global initiative, India has really shown the way for all other countries. A generation ago, when people earned degrees and learned on the job, they typically didn't expect to learn continuously. These days, lifelong learning is one of the keys to creating a more sustainable, healthy, and inclusive future. It is a new human right, particularly for vulnerable or underrepresented populations. With all the hard work that everyone here is doing, we're going to succeed beyond our wildest dreams. So let's celebrate what we've accomplished, and let's also redouble our efforts. When we celebrate International Day of Women and Girls in Science in the coming years, we're going to wonder what took us so long. Every day will be International Day of Women and Girls in Science. Thank you for allowing me to spend time with you today. You inspire me. Thank you.
Science and technology are critical towards advancement of a nation. But then remember, no nation can go forward without its women and girls. So we all need to collaborate. The corporates, the government, the NGOs, and most importantly, the society at large, so that we support the next generation of women in STEM, so that they go on and make history and further become role models and inspire our girls of future. Remember, when she STEMs, we win.